and the live screen will be coming on soon. Okay, so we are pushing everything out. I got a few of your slides, which is Mitch and Graham and I think Evelyn, three of you. The rest of you not using slides is okay. Don't worry. There is nothing to do with slides. There's a 3 to 5 minutes for every one of you.
The rest of us are the lazy ones, Paul.
Yeah,
the rest of us are the
you're
lazy ones.
you just
Yeah, so lazy to do slides.
but I think it's yourself feel comfortable. As we start letting people in around 2:55, like I say, feel comfortable because you are really in a very comfort zone at your own place. Right, the 3 to 5, I will sort of, the moment you start talking, you actually don't know it's 3 to 5. It just go on and on and on. So you need to manage your own 3 to 5 minutes, right? There are 8 of you, plus me giving my opening, and by the time we finish this, I think it's about 3:45. So around 3:45, then we're actually going to do Q&A. So the audience that we have, I'm sure they will be quite interested to hear every single point of view coming from every single one of you. Right? And the audience may also have specific questions. I'm sure now, because we're doing a Zoom meeting, which means you can see queries, you can see in the chat. So if you open up your chat, you can see people asking questions if there are. You can also see the number of participants. No, now there are 27, means that they are hanging along outside, not letting them in until I told them that they won't be let in until 2:55. So as they come in, and then knowing the way our industry works, the moment they know you, they'll unmute themselves and they're going to say hi, and then okay, that's going to be a lot of fun, right? It's going to be noisy. The moment it gets too noisy, I will mute everybody and we start all over again, right? When it's your turn to speak, as I tell you that it's your turn, then you just unmute yourself and go on. Right? I can unmute you. Actually, I tend to mute people more than I unmute them. I have this tendency to, okay, you stop talking, you stop talking. So I like the power in my little finger here. When I was hosting dialogues on stage, it's a bit more difficult because I can't mute your mic. So normally I'm quite interruptive, so I will tell the speaker to stop, which at one time I got quite a bit of scolding as well. So I will show you, I can show you what I have, but my entire setup is really that. Lots of screen, lots of lights. Kim, can you all see whether Mark Palin is signed in already? I saw him already. Okay, let me meet Mark first. I actually have assistants over my left side working, not working too well. Yes, okay, all on. So we have a very nice, wait, let me take a shot of everyone. Nice speaker. Okay, I was looking down. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so we are on. Let me see, 2:52. So the control now will be given to my team, and my team will basically be admitting the rest of the folks in around, we say, what time do we say? 2:55, So anybody got any question, last minute, want to say?
Hi, Paul, just checking on my audio. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, is this sound very good?
Wei Chuan.
Wei Chuan, yes, it's coming out nice.
Thanks.
Paul, Jeremy here. Just a question for you now. I mean, just to clarify, when you do the opening introduction, you will ask every one of us to introduce ourselves. Only our personal introduction. That's it. And then you will carry on into the next discussion, which is the different topics in the presentation. Correct?
Okay, your self-intro, company intro, as well as your 5 minutes talk is together in that first part. So what I'm going to do is that when I start, I will effectively share the developments 2020. I also share what happened at 8 a.m. this morning or 6 a.m. this morning in Capitol Hill. I'm sure you all know what happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 2020 is a nice end to whatever has ended in the next 13 days. We know that 2021 is different. So I will share that as well. And of course, I will talk through the availability of vaccines, as well as also therapeutics, and that there is an anticipation of lots of changes coming in. and lots of developments at the same time. So
Paul,
I will essentially give my own comments. My comments will last about 5 minutes.
Paul, I think what Xavier is asking is the same question I asked you. Is it just intro, or do you want us to talk a bit of our high-level view of 2020?
Oh, high
Because
level
remember,
view, yeah.
Xavier, I think what he wants us in 5 minutes, if I got it correctly, I had a chat with him separately. Within 5 minutes, you got to talk about yourself and the company if you want to, and then just a few words of 2020.
Okay. And 2021.
2021, yes.
Yeah.
Jaya is still living in 2020.
We're
Okay.
going to talk about last year a bit, right? At the beginning, right?
Yeah. You got to talk about you can say the impact as a summary, and then what you see for 2021, because there's only 5 minutes. Okay, folks. The other one that very soon I'm going to let the guys in already. The other one we also realize is this: without the audience, when we're talking to each other, the impact is not there, and that's why we do it as a Zoom meeting rather than a Zoom webinar. Okay, so now, and especially now, Tim, please let the rest of the guys in. Okay, can let them in already. And then you can see the folks coming in. And you can mute yourself and we wait for the rest of the folks. Okay, that's it, right? I see Mark Yong.
Hello.
Hello.
Happy New Year, Paul. Yeah.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year. Yeah.
I see Stanley. Hello, folks. Wow, this is interesting, right? So as
Hello,
my guys
Izzy.
start letting people in.
Yeah.
Okay, so my screen can go up to 49. Let's see, right?
We've been talking about you lately, Paul. We'll talk more later offline sometime.
Oh no.
all good stuff. All good stuff. Yeah, I'll let you get on.
Okay, sure. Welcome, folks. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
Let's see how they all sign in.
Yeah.
By the way, those who are already on board with me, and especially my panelists, we are broadcasting this via YouTube as well. The whole sessions are all recorded. It's recorded for the reason that nowadays, we love sound bites and visual bites. And we're hoping that through whatever we are doing, we could collect enough sound bites and visual bites to start doing online shows and online content. And I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, right? It's getting more exciting as more and more people sign in. We will start exactly at 3 p.m. So we have another 3 more minutes and we wait for the rest of the folks to come on board. We on paper, oh, hello, Michael. On paper, we had 350 something sign-ups. I don't expect everyone to come onto Zoom. Some people are not comfortable with Zoom live video. So they will be watching us via YouTube as well. See, YouTube got people coming in already. Yes, Shirley can hear you. I can see you also. I can see your name. By the way, if you're on YouTube, we found out that the lag is about 20 seconds. So YouTube folks are living in history. Oh no, yeah, history. We are the future, guys. So those of you who are online with me, this is the future. Okay, let's wait. Hold on. 2 more minutes. Actually, the initial part was we had a plan to do a broadcast whereby the YouTube side we have an introduction show, and almost like when you're watching news, and then the globe start turning around, and then all those dramatic music. This morning when we were testing, by the way, we've been testing here for the last 4 hours, and we realized that everything looks good until when we were trying to push out the Zoom part. All the audios in Zoom were off. So basically, can hear me, but when you talk, cannot hear, it goes total silence. So in the end, we had no choice. We pushed the YouTube, we pushed the audio and visual of YouTube through Zoom. Most of you want to learn about this, you can come to my setup. This is actually a live at our lab. This is our smart technologies lab. You can see the robotics here. These are actually autonomous mobile robots. And then if you see here, these are actually displays that we put up. We use this space to promote, or what we think that we are promoting, smart technologies, and hope that we can help industry to understand better what is automation, autonomous mobile robots or robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you name it, we play with that. Okay, we have hit the 3 o'clock and then let's get started, right? And for the rest of the folks who are joining us, please mute yourself. Our panelists, you can see them, they are all in the front few screens. For those who have something to ask, something to say, the preference is to do it via chat. Of course, if you want to say something, and it's better to say it live, please go ahead, just raise up your hand and I will unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask your questions. If your friends are watching us on YouTube, as I say, we are about 20 to 30 seconds lag, then your friends will be watching everything in slow motion, which is going to be very weird. So anyway, the reason for holding this particular session, I managed to invite up to 8 different panelist speakers. We can call them senior professionals. Some of them looks like veterans. Who is the oldest one? Okay, and then we got this very young man in a very red background. Okay, that I think he's the youngest. Alvin, are you the youngest? I'm sure you are. And I think maybe I'm the oldest. Maybe I'm not. But the fact that we are eight different panelists at this point in time with 8 different experiences of background. I'm not going to go through all their names because I'm going to introduce them later one by one, and then they will then share their background, their company's background, and their thoughts on 2021. But let's do this, right? Let's do a summary, right? We know what happened in 2020. If some of you are like me, when you wake up on the 1st of January, you actually thought that you wake up on 1st of January 2020 because the entire 2020 was a blur. Everything sort of like compressed, and you spend almost 9 months at home. You didn't go to work. So if you have a crystal ball or you have a way to turn back time, 2020 actually didn't happen. So we are in 2020, right? Well, no, we are in 2021. But what is happening in 2021, what is changing in 2021 is more exciting because the vaccines and therapeutics are coming out, but they're not coming out in the speed that we think they're coming out. So there is going to be a delay in the economic development side. And that's the reason why we picked these 8 different speakers, because each of them coming with different point of view could share their views on some of these developments. So I'm going to start passing passing my mic to them. Let me bring out. Okay, by the way, I also have to look at my screen to see what is going on. Let me introduce them one by one. I have Xavier from SSI Schaefer. So he'll be representing the material handling equipment, or at least the equipment or hardware side. I have Mitch. Mitch comes from a consulting and research company. He'll be touching very much on the digital world, at least the e-commerce side. The young man that I say is Holio, Alvin. Alvin is basically from a startup, disrupting the industry like crazy because he didn't know that his father is still angry with him. We have Graham. Graham is from SAP. I keep on saying it's a software. Graham corrected me a few days ago and says, we are more than a software. So I'll let Graham talk about this later. Wei Chen from EDB. Those who are from Singapore, you know, the Economic Development Board drives the economic development of Singapore. So Wei Chen will have things to share and say as well. Jaya with the futuristic background. Jaya is actually from Schneider Electric. He runs the logistics operations for Schneider, at least out of Singapore side, but he runs Asia Pacific. Mark Palin. Mark is the Senior Vice President for Contract Logistics in Kuehne Nagel. Mark will be sharing from the 3PL's point of view. Interestingly, we also have Evelyn, 3PL, but yet Evelyn actually is the CIO of Jodis. So as a CIO of Jodis, Evelyn may have a different point of view. Did I miss out anyone? I think I got all of you, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'm practically almost done to explain that we are in for a good ride. I'm sure the 2021, at least second to third quarter, will be very exciting. Unfortunately, I don't think we can still host our event. Last year, our awards was cancelled. This year, there is a very good chance that our awards will also not be held. But next year, I'm sure we can come back together. So for now, let me start with my shipper friend. I call him a shipper because they control how they want their products to be distributed. And it's Jaya from Schneider Electric. Jaya,
Hey, thank you, Paul. Anyway, my name, in case you all get mistaken, my name is not Shipper. My name is Jaya. Okay. Nice to meet everybody. It looks like we have a fairly good crowd. So let me just get to it. So I'm from, my name is Jaya. I'm from Schneider Electric. So Schneider is not Schindler. A lot of people get confused between Schneider and Schindler. Schneider is a energy company. It's about $25 billion company, about 140 over staff around the world. It's a very old company. It's 180 years old. It started off with as a steel company actually, and grown over the years to where we are today. I personally myself, I started out my career in PSA 4 years, and I worked in HP for 20 years before coming to Schneider, and I'm around 4 years now. Back to Schneider again, just to give you a profile of what we do in a quick words. So we do everything from hardware perspective, like low voltage, medium voltage, industrial automation that power up buildings. And our partners range from everywhere from medical, life sciences, retail, and facilities, and even home energy under our EcoStructure solution. So we combine hardware and solution together to give the EcoStructure for sustainable solutions, digitized to the broad public. And our segments are actually quite very rich. Okay, so much for myself and Schneider. I have a certain timeline that Paul is ticking off. So let me just go into what I see in 2020, what happened to us basically. Right? From my perspective, very quickly, I think there's a trinity. I call it trinity because there are three big things that happened. One was, I think for the first time, we ourselves knew ourselves a bit more, how resilient we are. And it's a period of discovery of ourselves in terms of how we have to unlearn, rethink, and reinvent ourselves. So there's a lot of things that rebutted our normal thought process, the way we work, strategies like manufacturing strategies where centralized locations. Some of these strategies were now questioned whether it's correct or wrong, right, in the new world. Even our workplaces, how we manage our people, even when we manage our suppliers, we used to worry only about one tier. Now we talk about second tier, third tier, because the dynamics have changed so much that it questioned everything that we took as a norm. So I think last year gave us a chance to test ourselves, discovery, learn, and made us question everything that we took for a norm, right? And the third part of the Trinity was actually, it brought us another flavor that how technology plays such an important part in helping us navigate these whole challenges. And something that we may not have taken, and I say technology is a very broad word. There's many things to it, IoT, which I think later Paul will go deeper into it. But the point is that technology became a forefront of our navigation through 2020. I think that's a very important learning. And last but not least, I think 2020 also brought the entire profession to another level. For the first time, people start to understand supply chain. They realize how important supply chain, because never before supply chain was brought to that level. Because now we question and we ask, when is our food going to be on the table? And then all of a sudden, people realize that, oh, what they took for granted, right? Now, if you don't have containers moving, you don't have air freights, you don't have road transport or what have you, or even people going to the factories, you're not going to get food on the table. So supply chain all of a sudden became a very important part of our lives. So I think from a profession perspective, I think more people would like to get interested in supply chain now, as opposed to maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I know I spoke a bit fast, but generally these are my thoughts around what happened 2020. 21, I think we're going to talk about a bit about it later. So I'll just pause for you. That's all, Paul.
Thank you, Jaya. I was told by someone who says that Paul, 2/3 of your name has been popularized by almost all the global leader supply chain, but we are called Supply Chain Asia. I was hoping that they were, every time they talk about supply chain and then they say in Asia, then we will sound so good, right? Supply Chain Asia. Anyway, thank you, Jaya. That was a good summary from your side. I invited Wei Chen from EDB because from the government side, they may have other perspectives. So Wei Chen, your platform.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for inviting. Happy New Year to everyone. My name is Wei Chen. I head EDB's supply chain and connectivity team. So a quick word on EDB. As mentioned by Paul, we are a government agency and we do economic development in 3 ways. One, by attracting investments into Singapore. 2, we develop sectors, so industry verticals that we are committed to. We try to create ecosystems for them. And 3, we continue to work with our government partners to enhance Singapore's business environment for companies. Under this broad ambit, my particular team focuses on 2 things. One is actually we are looking at how we can continue to strengthen Singapore's position as a leading logistics hub in Asia. And 2, we are also looking at how to enhance Singapore's position as a hub for companies to use Singapore as a place to manage and execute their supply chain activities in Asia. So we'll be happy to engage the community on this a little bit more, not just in this event, but beyond that. My reflections on 2020, I think, Paul, you wanted us to have different points of view, but I have to agree with Jaya. I think what has resulted from the crisis is a greater attention placed into supply chain organizations. In the past, I hear that supply chain executives usually get caught up when you don't meet your numbers. But at this point in time, I think many organizations, especially in the C-suite and CEO level, have started to, pay more attention to what the supply chain organizations are doing. And my hope is that, that would translate into more resources and investments being put in the hands of supply chain professionals. And actually, that's what we are starting to see with companies that we're having conversations with. A lot more discussions around how to drive the transformation of supply chain. And when I look at the topic that Paul has brought us for discussion today, I think opportunities beyond COVID-19 probably should be reframed as opportunities amidst COVID-19, because if we look at the next 1 to 2 year time frame, we will still probably have to live with the virus in our mix. You look at what's happening in the UK, where I was based before returning to Singapore for this role. They are entering into the tier 5 restrictions, and the Chief Medical Officer of England has actually mentioned that, expect restrictions to come in again next winter. So I think we are going to see a little bit of, or we continue to see the impact of COVID on our lives. And I think perhaps what's better for us to look at is how we adapt to this new environment. And I think companies, societies have been able to do that to a certain extent in 2020. In 2021, I think there will be more need to do that. And I think as a result of that, I think we will really be compelled to think about how we, in this particular domain of supply chain, how we navigate and how we transform the supply chains for the future. And that's not the only thing that we are having to deal with. I think Paul also alluded to earlier. If you see what's happening in Washington, beyond COVID, there are also geopolitical tensions that we have to deal with. And companies will also have to start to look at new opportunities. And I think with that, I'm looking forward to the year, because it will mean more conversations between ourselves and our investors on how we can create Singapore as a platform for them to navigate this complex and dynamic world. So thanks. Happy to continue discussion.
Thank you, Wei Chen. Yeah. Thank you, Wei Chen. It was also in the same context that Supply Chain Asia compiling our research and understanding different views from different research firms, that we also noticed the optimistic part of saying that by the end of first quarter, we are out of this pandemic. None of them dare to put a finger to it and say that it is going to be in the first quarter. In fact, the most optimistic views we received so far is third quarter of 2021. And the most pessimistic view, 2023. So between third quarter of 2021 to 2023, yeah, I think that should be the word, right? Opportunities amidst COVID-19. Thank you, Wei Chen. That was a good one, right? I now have Mitch from TM Insights. Mitch has something to share relating to, especially because of this pandemic, the e-commerce trend. So let me bring Mitch on board. Mitch, are you there? I'm going to share your screen.
Yes, I'm here. I hope everyone can hear me. So hi, my name is Mitch. I'm very excited to be here today. And I want to explain a little bit more from an e-commerce perspective. And right now, I'm the Executive Vice President, E-commerce Asia for TM Insight. TM Insight is an Australian, or they were founded in Australia roughly 10 years ago. And they were basically helping big brands and retailers to accelerate their growth in supply chain. So it's a traditionally supply chain consultancy. But over the years, they ventured into property as well as project management, and lately e-commerce. Why e-commerce? I think there was a natural progression, especially what you can see and what I will explain in a minute, the trend which they're seeing in e-commerce. That means a lot of the supply chains of different brands and retailers were just not ready for it. Little bit about myself. I was the past 20 years, I'm working in supply chain and e-commerce. Thereof the last 10 years here in Asia. And I was working for e-commerce, which is one of the biggest e-commerce enabler here in Southeast Asia. And until recently, I was responsible for the whole e-commerce business of Adidas in Southeast Asia. And I was basically managing all the brand.com as well as the marketplaces. So looking a little bit, and I know there was a lot of review about 2020. I want to show a little bit 2020, but I want to go more a bit into the trends. Even it says here 2021, but I think a lot of it has started already. So just from an overall perspective, from a brand perspective, we saw pre-COVID, we saw something like 5 to 7% of the total business was really from an e-com perspective. Then while there was the movement orders and everything, store closures, everything going on, and a lot of brands, they saw up to 30% spike within their e-com business, which is tremendous. And that's something what they have probably foreseen in I don't know, 5 to 10 years from now. Overall, the e-com business here in Southeast Asia is around 100 billion in 2020, and it's expected to be tripled by 2025. So that means there's just one way where it goes right now, and that's up. And looking a little bit into the trends, I think you see a lot offline to online shift. So whether it's H&M who announces that they're closing stores and they're going more towards online, you have Nike who just announced a permanent shift towards digital commerce. Then channel expansion. You see, for instance, the likes of Nike. Out of a sudden, you see them on Lazada, although they were only doing brand.com before. And then, of course, along with that, and along with the high volumes which we're seeing, there is a very big ask for scalable e-com fulfillment, right? And a lot of companies saying, like, you know what, you need to centralize, you need to do this and that. It's not always that way. So we're also looking into micro fulfillment. We're looking in automation for fulfillment, but also for systems. So that's definitely one which the need for it was definitely accelerated. Additionally, rise of social commerce. So I'm not sure for the guys who are here online on Facebook, Instagram and whatnot. So you have the option now to buy directly on these platforms. And that is a game changer for the whole industry. And I'm even saying that in a way that Lazada, Shopee and the likes which we have over here, they should be quite concerned, because this is an option where you can directly convert consumer where the demand happens. Other than that, you see a lot of interesting partnerships. H&M, for instance, starting now with Zalora, some pilots in the Philippines. Then I'm pretty sure you guys followed Gojek and Tokopedia. They had they're talking about a merger. And last but not least, there's a lot of VR technologies out there. So we're talking about 3D furnitures. We're talking about virtual fitting rooms, about beauty camps where you can try your favorite lipstick. And all of it will help basically to additionally accelerate e-com growth and attract those people who normally would not buy online. So overall, maybe just as a closing statement, getting towards my 5 minutes. So e-commerce growth accelerated and it will stay that way. So brands and retailers, they need to be ready. And the most important part, they cannot just simply plan for this year or for the next year. They need to look into the next 5 to 10 years, how they want to develop. Back to Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. That was something interesting because and one of the reasons why I thought that your point of view was also exciting. And we know that because of this pandemic, the growth of delivery companies has actually grown up. And then, in fact, a lot of these companies were in later stages of asking for money, were getting their money pumped in. And the last mile logistics became one of the key drivers of e-commerce growth at the same time. So that was exciting. But then just nice, right after you, I have two of my 3PL friends, both Evelyn and Mark. But let me let Evelyn come on board first, because Evelyn has a technological point of view with regard to IT and its impact on 3PL. So Evelyn.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Evelyn, and I'm the regional CIO for Jerdis, Asia Pacific. My responsibility is to drive digital and IT transformation in this region. And I've actually joined Jerdis since 1 year ago. So maybe just to give you a little bit of a background, who is Jerdis? For those of you who have not heard of us, we are actually a supply chain provider headquartered in France. And we are also a subsidiary of the French state-owned railway organization. The services that we offer worldwide is actually like freight forwarding services, contracts logistics, distribution and express, supply chain optimization. Yeah, we have a presence in 120 countries worldwide, and in terms of staff strength, we have 60,000 employees globally. So now, in fact, if you look at my view on 2020 is that the good thing is that Geodis, we started our transformation program even before the COVID started. In 2018, we have this transformation program, where our ambition is to transform Geodis as a traditional freight forwarding company into a technology-driven supply chain organization. So that plan started even before COVID starts. So now then you may ask, right, then what is the impact to us? How do we see 2020? In fact, personally, I see that 2020 is actually a challenging year, but yet a very fruitful year for Geodis. Personally, as a CIO, I always find that, IT, investment in IT or technology, it is not that, it is not that people are not really investing in technology unless and until you can prove, your ROI, right? And the business benefit. But because of this COVID pandemic, right, this digital acceleration have to be accelerated. Like take for example in Geodis, right? When the pandemic first started, we have only in a couple of weeks where we have to enable our colleagues to work from home, right? So can you imagine, like before that, right? In a traditional supply chain organization, right? You have desktops, and how are you going to get these people to carry their desktop homes? But we managed to do it, right? And not only that, we see that with this pandemic, there were a lot of disruptions. People are not able to get to the office as one thing, even in the warehouses, right? We are not able to get, people may not be able to get the enough resources to work in the warehouse. And therefore, this pushes the need for automation, right? And also all the paperwork, where there's a lot of paperwork in a typical traditional freight forwarding, contracts, logistics operations, all these, have to be automated because we no longer have access to printers now. So I see that as a very exciting journey, and a very exciting catalyst, right, for us in Geodis. And personally, I think that 2020 is indeed a very fruitful year for us, because we have managed to roll out a couple of new solutions to our customers, as well as those old solutions that we have. We actually empowered them, or rather we actually renew them with technology, so that our customers are able to access to our services, better. And we are also able to provide our customers with the transparency that they need in these uncertain times. Yeah, so that's my opinion, from a Geodis perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the more positive one. You all did make money, then there's good bonus for every one of you. Whether Ono will give us a different story. I don't think he signed. That's okay.
I'm hoping that my boss is listening.
I have another interesting panelist with us, and the only reason why he got even more interesting is because his company created a pharmaceutical hub in Singapore a few years back, and there was a question about why focus on pharmaceutical. So on hindsight, this company became really good foresight company, right? And that's Kun and Naga. So let me invite Mark Palin. Can you take the stage now?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Paul, for inviting me. And no, we're not that good. We didn't know a pandemic was coming, and what an interesting time it was. But Mark Palin, been with Kun and Naga now here in Singapore for 5 years, originally from New Zealand. And it's been an interesting 5 years, and it continues to be so. If I look at who KN is, we have a traditional business around sea, air, road, and contract logistics products. But we try and, instead of talking about how many containers we move or tonnage or square meters we have, we're trying to look at it a bit differently now and measure ourselves on how many inspiring conversations we have with our customers and business partners. How we can try and make bold promises to do something different and empower our people to do that, and also recognize the fact that we've got a role to play in society and deliver progress toward that. So we're trying to deliver, sort of recognize that we have a different way of looking at our business and than the traditional way, and that's what we're trying to do going forward. If I look at 2020 in review, I'm probably not too different to everybody else. As a management team, we thought we were staring into the abyss, sort of back end of Q1. We took action accordingly. We saw demand dropping considerably during Q1, and we need to prepare for Q2. What we saw across our business units, C was certainly most affected with demand in the first half, and then second half became a question of capacity and equipment availability, and that was made it a very challenging year for the C team. Air, again, we were expecting this time last year of a real difficult year in air. No one could foresee the demand that was coming through, all the PPE going across and the charters going across. So in the end, the air team had a very strong year in 2020. And my division, CL, we were quite lucky. We have a good mix of essential customers who are upping their volume to support, whether it be e-commerce or pharma or food. To some of the traditional customers on automotive, we're struggling a bit. So in the end, we managed to reduce our costs more than we had reduction in our revenue. So we ended up having a strong year as well. In terms of what we expect and what we're talking about as a management team going forward, if I break it down by business unit first, and then give you maybe a general management team overview of what we're looking at. For C, the supply and demand issues are continuing, and we see that continuing going forward. And it's an interesting position to be in right now. And I know the team seem to be working harder than ever at the moment. We're trying to talk about productivity and improving efficiency, but it's very hard to do that in this environment. The geopolitical issues, I mean, what you saw this morning, gosh, in the US, China and its position and what we're doing in the South China Sea and so forth has an impact on economies and demand. And that has a direct impact on our C team. So watching that very carefully and looking for opportunities and how we can respond to that is important for the C team. And then the other, of course, is the other side of the C is the digitalization. Most companies are looking at how they offer services to customers and digitalizing that as much as possible and preparing for that even more. So we see that continuing going into 2021 and beyond. In terms of air, vaccines. Gosh, ready or not, they're here, right? So we see that continuing. It's not going to be a Q1 or Q2 issue. It's going to be probably the next 2 years, we think, it being a topic. So we're ready for that. And even if we're not, other people will be. So we need to be ready for that. We see through nearshoring, reshoring, regionalization, we see a lot more demand coming forward from Inter-Asia. So we're readying for that. We see that happening more and more. And then, of course, the stat that's always in my mind for air is, I think it was 75% of capacity was in the belly of passenger jets. So that's had a big impact on the availability, and that's going to continue. And how long that continues is the $1 million question. For myself and contract logistics, supply chain resiliency is the key topic. Customers are asking how they can respond better to uncertainties going forward, and we see that continuing, and we see a role to play in how we can work with customers to support that. Omni-channel, as Mitch pointed out, the key winner, I guess, if there was a winner out of a pandemic, it's probably omni-chain. Customers had to gear up for it. The ones who invested beforehand were in a stronger position, of course. And now we're working with customers to solidify that that service or catch up if they're behind. And finally, automation and digitalization for my business is key. Again, customers are looking for ways of smoothing their ability to supply, and digitalization and automation is one of those. Just quickly, a few talking points we have as a management team. We meet a couple of times a month. Of course, the $1 million question is when is COVID-19 going to end and what it's going to mean in 2021. We don't have that crystal ball. I wish I did, but certainly for the near future, it's here to stay, and we're hopefully adapting to it better. Just worried about the second, third, and fourth waves that other countries are experiencing and what that's going to mean for Asia, which seems to be on a different way of dealing with it. The global markets I mentioned before, like what happened this morning, and our role in that, and as a business, how we respond to that and what we can do to protect our business. The fast pace of technological development is always a topic, and we're always looking at ways of improving how we do things and investing in technology. We see a clear line in terms of the dissolving between the B2B and B2C that's continuing, and we expect that to go even faster in 2021. Sustainability is a key differentiator. Our customers are demanding that we also propose not just on price, but on what we're doing on the on sustainability and the environment, and how they can use that to meet their own requirements and partner with us to improve that area. So that's a differentiator for us, and we see that happening more and more going forward. And finally, because Paul's going to knock me off, my 5 minutes is up. The future of work. You know, we're all looking at our industries and how we attract and retain our staff. This Zoom technology is wonderful. What's going to mean for travel going forward? Do we need to be in the office every day? What sort of office do we need? How do we get the most out of our team members and get the most out of them going forward, and productivity and so forth, to make it a win-win situation is a constant discussion for us at KM. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mark. I have three more. Actually, I find the three more that we have laid up will be a bit exciting, because they provide both the hardware and the software side to the solutions required in this industry. So let me invite Xavier from SSI Schaefer on board first. Xavier, want to share your point of view? Did Xavier disappear?
Thanks a lot. Can you hear
yes.
me?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to some, I think, and maybe good evening to the rest. This is Xavier. I'm the regional head for Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa for SSI Schaefer Group, based here in Singapore. I am originally from Barcelona. I got into Singapore last century, 1997, with another company from Barcelona, but I joined Schaefer in year 2000. So it's been quite a while with Schaefer now, and probably quite exciting seeing the growth of this industry, supply chain in general, of course, but also our own industry, as we call it, intralogistics, in Singapore, but also across the region over the last 20 years. Quite amazing. But probably it's most interesting what has happened last year and what is about to happen in the next few years in our industry. SSI Schaefer, we are one of the largest global players for intralogistics industry, and we provide logistics solutions from conventional racking and shelving. Quite a lot is still in Asia, but also all the way to fully automated warehouses and fulfillment centers in the region. Now, Paul asked me to have a chat about specific topics in the pre-COVID and post-COVID in our industry, intralogistics and supply chain, and probably focus on automation. So, if a reflection for 2020, as it was last year, and I think more or less we all agree that nobody was ready to what happened last year. We all had our budget set and discussed during 2019, and we all were hoping for a good growth for last year, 2020, as the whole region really was coming out for a series of a number of years with really strong growth in most of the countries, actually, in Asia Pacific. But suddenly, COVID came. I think a year now, still 1 year ago, the COVID was still very much enclosed in China. And the rest of us outside Asia, we still see a few things, but Europe was just watching the whole thing like it was a movie. Yeah, like we probably watched this morning the Capitol thing in Washington like it was a movie. But reality came through very fast to all of us, and I think everybody has got hit. So one thing probably I can say about the pandemic last year, everybody has experienced, it have actually helped or forced many companies to test whether the business continuity plans we had in place were actually working. And probably all of us were proven wrong. Like I said, nobody was ready for this. Nevertheless, on the positive side, I think I have to say also we sort of managed to adapt quite quickly about a number of things. You know, I think Paul mentioned just a year ago nobody was working from home, and right now none of us is actually traveling anywhere, most likely, and we still carry on with the business as sort of normal. So this has been quickly accepted, and because of technology. Now, in our industry, intralogistics, again, I think the adoption of technology and automation per se in warehouses and distribution centers and fulfillment centers will play an even more important role than what it was in the past, just because the COVID has actually accelerated everything 10 times. To me now, really the big question is, I think there is no doubt that the markets will grow faster in the next few years, depending on how fast we are able to resolve the virus situation in our region to start with. Now, the big question to me is what markets are going to grow at what speed? Who's growing faster? I'm not talking about just the countries. Obviously, China at the moment is leading the whole growth in the economy. This year, they will probably grow at 2.6%, and next year, probably back to 7%. But we have some countries already in Asia, Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, growing, like Taiwan, for example, growing already this year. But I can see 2021 is still some big challenges with Indonesia, I'm afraid, with India and probably the Philippines as well, to get the virus under control. So when you go into market and market sectors or industries, I think we all trying to guess which industry is going to grow faster, because we all want to be part of that, right? So this is now the real test for 2021. As a becoming, in my view, a big transition year or a continuation of 2020. Where is the market growing? And how we can actually play a part of that role. We as a company, we try to focus now on specific markets in the region and globally. We also see from the C-level perspective that Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa as well, will probably grow faster than the rest of the world. So there's a specific focus in our region. It comes with expectations as well. Yeah. So as far as our customer is concerned, I think again, what is going to happen is going to be driven by speed to market. How fast are we able to react to get our goods, our solutions into the market? And the same will apply for everybody else. How we can increase our efficiencies, how we can help our customers to increase productivity. And this has to come through technology only. I'm not talking about cost savings. I mean, last year, of course, everybody was hit. And the first thing we all try to do is to try to save money, save costs. Yeah, but moving forward now, I think that the focus will be really on productivity and efficiency through technology. Somebody already said that COVID has become sort of a catalyst, which is true. I can see that the same, and also it also accelerated the change for innovation in our markets in the region. So adoption of automation and technology is going to be a must, totally inevitable in the next couple of years. So again, this year, 2021, because we have 2021 already, in my view, will be a transition and a real test for everybody, how strong we have thought this through and how accurate we are in our vision for what the new market will become in 2022 and beyond that. Now, if you ask me for a summary for 2021, my expectations for our company, but also for the market as a whole in the region, is completely a strategy realignment, really, as a 2021 becoming a bridge year. And more important, those we work for Western companies, although we have been in Asia for a long time, like probably most of us in the meeting today, in the next few years, I do see the whole region, Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa, becoming one big region, completely decoupled. And I know this is going to become a question later about this decoupling thing from US. But I think from a business perspective, our region will be totally decoupled from Europe and from North America, because this region is now growing at much faster speed than the rest of the world. Europe is still in big shit. I apologize my English. You know it, and US even bigger shit. So I think we have an opportunity in our region actually to pick up on the growth. But the question is being able to realign our strategies to the market fast enough so we can generate growth, we can generate profits. Thanks.
Thank you, Xavier. I was asked to cut the S word from my live show, so you just added two. Okay, two regions. Two region in deep something, right? So let me have Graham. Graham is coming from SAP, and like I say, I was speaking to Graham and can't mention the word software, and says that no, it's beyond that. So Graham, can I have you?
Can you hear
Graham,
me?
you still around? Okay, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the software guy is challenged by the technology. Yeah, it's Graham Conlon from SAP. For those of you who don't know SAP, we're the world's largest business software company. We started almost 50 years ago in Germany in the world of enterprise resource planning. And now, as an organization, we are about 100,000 people globally, and we manage end-to-end enterprise applications, predominantly in the cloud. Within that world, there's a business unit, digital supply chain, and I head up that business unit for Asia Pacific, Japan. And slightly differently, when we talk about digital supply chain at SAP, we include all of the traditional supply chain components, supply chain planning, supply chain execution and logistics, but we also include manufacturing, we include engineering and research and development, and we also include all the capabilities to manage and operate plant and facilities as well. So we have a very, very broad definition of supply chain, and we spend a huge amount of time talking to our clients about how do we digitize that end-to-end digital supply chain. So maybe just a few words about what we saw in 2020 and where that leads us to going forward. So one of the words that gets used all the time is disruption when we talk about supply chains. And I think from my perspective, what we saw in 2020 was what we've been seeing for many, many years. We just saw it a lot more aggressively. We saw it a lot more transparently. And what I mean by that is the conversations that we've been having about managing holistic supply chains for many, many years now. We've had conversations about what do we do because of China-US trade challenges. We've had conversations about what's going to happen when Brexit happens. We've had conversations about financial crisis and so on. And this obviously this is not the first pandemic, certainly not in Asia. So many of the conversations that we're having now, this is just the same disruption to supply chains. And many of the organizations that we're working with, whilst it's much, much more aggressive and everybody can see empty shelves in supermarkets, and everybody can see lockdowns and shutdowns of various different countries and economies, it's effectively the same conversation, but it's been taken up a level because it's so transparent. And that's why when we look at 2020, what did we see happen? We saw, first of all, that everyone talks about resilience as being the answer to this disruption. And indeed that is the case. But if you think about resilience, resilience means that something's tough. It means that it bounces back. And actually, there was a nuance on this because it became very, very clear that we weren't going to bounce back. People used the terminology new normal. We're not going to bounce back to where we were pre-COVID. And therefore, more and more of the conversations that we're having right now, which stretch through into 2021, are not just about building resilient supply chains, but it's having supply chains that can pivot, supply chains that are agile to be in a position to cope with whatever the next disruption is thrown at us. The other thing I think that's interesting is slightly a positive note, because I'm determined to be positive. And the positive note is that when COVID and the pandemic first hit us, everybody was concerned about how do we survive. They were concerned about business continuity. They were concerned about cash flow. And it was all about how do we survive and the downturn. And I think many organizations have moved through that phase, and they're now talking about how do we manage the recovery. And don't forget that a downturn disruption, in some instances, a recovery disruption can be just as impactful. And that's when organizations grab market share, that's when organizations grow massively, and that's when some organizations fall by the wayside and are acquired. So I think for us, the positive thing that we're seeing is disruption continues, it's more massive than it's ever been before. Organizations are discussing how do they build resilience and agility into their supply chains, but organizations have moved from how do we survive to how do we thrive, and how do we get ready for the recovery. And what we're seeing in the marketplace, and this really brings me to the 2021, is that where organizations had a digital transformation agenda and maybe supply chain was 0.5 or 0.6 on that agenda, today digital supply chain's 1 or 2 on the list. So supply chain has become digital transformation for us, the digitizing of supply chains. And many organizations today are really looking at how do we use technology, how do we manage these processes so that we're ready for that recovery phase? And how do we look at the holistic end-to-end process right the way through from how we develop products, how we manufacture products, how we ship products, and beyond. So again, I think 2021, for me, I'm pretty optimistic about it, because I think, first of all, organizations are bracing themselves and building supply chain resilience to cope with the recovery disruption. And I think secondly, although it's been a bumpy year in 2020, if you look at it, and if you just look at the comments about e-commerce earlier, it is bumpy, but it's not bumpy in all sectors. And there are many, many sectors that are actually thriving right now and investing right now and really looking at how they can support the growth through recovery phases.
Thank you, Graham. I do see that this is pointing out to the last man in the show, the youngest man, and trying to disrupt the world. It'll be very interesting to hear your point of view, Alvin. You want to take the stage now?
Yeah, thank you, guys. I think thanks, Paul, for having me. I think having heard all the experts speak, I am quite honored to be in the first place invited here. So a bit about myself. Actually, I joined the industry when I graduated upon graduation, and I actually started my own trucking business at the age of 25. So I was an ex-container trucker in the transport business. I scaled it from 1 truck to 15 trucks and really felt that this industry is really left behind in old school. And then I co-founded Hollywood, which is the company that I'm running now. I'm co-founder and CEO with my partner. And so basically, I've just moved from a physical asset owner in the past to a digital or e-logistics platform company that you know of today. A bit of pressure now because I'm kind of representing the startup scene, and I'll just break down in terms of like exactly some of the thoughts that I have. But to share a bit more on Hollywood, we are Southeast Asia's port logistics platform. We actually aim to enable first mile logistics through technology. Very lucky to be backed by the Port of Singapore, PSA, as one of our key strategic investors. And our vision really is to be the largest aggregator of container truckers in Southeast Asia. We talk about technology deployment. I think the reality on the ground, me coming from someone from the ground, dealing with a lot of drivers on a day-to-day basis. I think for 2020, startups in general, I think across the board, we have seen a lot of money still being poured into the industry. Across the board for startups, I think that's something that is still common. Although they say that the investors are actually a little bit more skeptical in terms of like pouring funds and looking at things that they want things to be more firm now. I think the old days where you just grow at all costs, and then just like disrupt markets and undercut markets and have no proper unit economics are over. The days are over. A lot of more restraint now and looking at things where you're talking about sustainability, whether a business can actually sustain. And I think that's what typically the startup scene in general have seen. But you have seen the likes of the better ones, they are actually still raising more. So the more mature startups, you see big funds actually pouring more money to double down on companies that they think will succeed and still thrive through this downtime. And I think on that note, for logistics related startup, the good news is that actually for my particular industry, because goods keep moving, life goes on, we are actually still considered an essential service. And I think dealing with a crowd of supply chain professionals today, I think that's something that I don't have to explain. The pandemic actually forced the industry to wake up to some extent, I think, to add on to the points of some of the earlier folks that I've mentioned. For me personally, I think being a company that has always been trying to fight and promote digitalization of the trucking and logistics industry, it came in as a very good thing for us, because in the past we have been trying to we're trying to actually encourage the older uncles, uncle, can you move online, you stop using paper. But I think one of the first things that happened during the lockdown is that the drivers actually have to move online. So one thing that we did is that because we have actually a company that we are running like a trucking business, but we are actually not so physical. We actually moved online, work from home even before lockdown. So we actually moved transit from physical office to home office very quickly. And what we did is we actually help a lot of the traditional trucking companies to do so. We actually help them to move online, get them to actually, some of them don't even know how to use laptops and etc. So we actually drive that change for them. And I think the key thing is that a lot of drivers, I think there was a period of time where there was a limit to the number of essential workers that they have, and they actually had that problem. So one of the stuff that we did, we actually helped to drive EPOD registration going online. I think that really helped the business for us as well, fortunately. And we are quite lucky to also be supported by SME Go Digital to push a lot of our products to these trucking companies to go online. I think one of the other key points for 2020 on the transportation note is that cash flow has actually become a lot tighter. So that's one aspect that I think downstream, a lot of the strains that we have seen, a lot of these trucking companies, they actually do a lot of outlays and reimbursements on behalf. So what we did for the industry is we partnered with a P2P lending platform as a trucking digital business. We actually helped to loan some of this money to these trucking companies to ease their cash flow. So the other point that maybe for 2021, I think it's going cashless is something that I think is going to become a norm. We hear a lot on the government pushing for the F&B and hawkers going cashless, and I think that's something that the logistics and transportation industry is going to move into. The depots will be moved to cashless. And I think a lot of efficiency gains are something that e-logistics companies like myself will continue to see. Personally, to end off, I think investments for logistics startups will continue to pour in 2021. I think in e-commerce, last mile, first mile, middle mile, whatever mile you call it. I think we will continue to see that becoming a trend. I think some of the views that I really see is that e-logistics and incumbents, there will be a drive towards digitalization that might come from inverted comma disruptive businesses like myself, that in the past, I think a lot of bigger companies actually also kind of fear, because we are, just going to go out there and kill the market, right? But I think a lot of that has also struck a little bit of balance because of the venture world changing a lot. I think 2020 or 2019 has seen the impact of course, what's that guy's name? WeWork, right? All these things happen, and all these founders are becoming like god of sorts, right? And I think the VCs have been more skeptical right now, and I think this will actually help balance things out in the past, where you can just burn and then capture market share. And I think what I see is that I'm seeing the incumbents and startups actually finally working together. Paul has actually invited me to speak a few times. I think that's one of the pain points as a young startup that we actually face. And I'm quite proud to say that a lot of the 3PLs players are actually a client of ours. We actually help to fulfill some of their digital shipments as well. So I think that's something that collaborative, is something that we have always been pushing for. And I think interoperability of platforms, or whether it's incumbent going online, is something that will be a big thing that will actually drive in 2021. That's my opinion. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. 8 of you. See, I told you 45, 50 minutes, I'm quite accurate. Right? But we go this part and says this, right? We know that the industry transformation has been an ongoing process since supply chain became known, logistics management became known all the way from the 1970s till now. The pandemic and COVID-19 essentially displaced quite a lot of the work that was done, but replace it with a lot more urgency in saying, how do we take this innovation, transformation together with new emerging technologies into a new space? But surprisingly, I was like trying to figure out who is on board. Then I saw my chairman. Supply Chain Asia, if you all have not noticed, has gone through a few transformations ourselves. We structure ourselves into various forms to the point that our most recent alignment we have in Executive Council. The Executive Council is actually led by Ono Boats. You can see his name down there. Ono is the regional president and CEO of Geodis, and supported by 4 deputy chairmen who focus on different aspects of the industry. In fact, I have one, which is Jaya here. Jaya looks after our professional development program side. Mark Parlin is heading up deputy chair for our industry development initiatives and programs. I have 2 more who is not here. One is leading our events, and one is leading our supply chain and procurement subcommittee. So since Ono is on board, can I get my chairman to say something as much as you can? You have 3 minutes.
Well, that's always going to be difficult for me because I got so much to say.
No. Say hi.
Unfortunately, I was not able to join in because there were over 100 participants. So the point where I joined in was the point where Alvin started his presentation. So that's the only section I've been able to witness.
Thank you.
I love the statement, Alvin, on you specifically said, Uncle, can you go online? I'm going to get back to that one. Yeah, because I think that's the essence of what we're talking about here. You know, my personal view, and this is not the Geodis view, but this is the Ono Boats view, is that if I look at the industry, my industry that is, and Geodis has been no difference in the past, is that the industry itself hasn't really innovated on its business model. It's my firm belief and my personal belief that the business model of the freight forwarding industry is based on a business model of lack of transparency. And if your business model is based on a lack of transparency, that means that in this era of 2021 and beyond, you're going to be out of business pretty soon. So that drives the urgency, in my view, of the need to change this industry. And that's my ambition with Geodis, putting the control back into the hands of the customer. And when you go back to the emergence of e-commerce, you will see that this whole sector is basically controlled by the customers, for the customers. And they have the controls in their own hands. And that's kind of where I want to take Geodis. It's a long journey, by the way, because we are no different than the rest of the forwarding industry that have far too long based their business model on a lack of transparency. So we have embarked on a journey of creating all kinds of new solutions, new enabled technology solutions to drive control back into the hands of the customers. And I believe that that's the only way to survive as a company that I am in and in the industry that I'm in. And so, you know, I heard Alvin talk about, you know, an aggregating platform. We have developed that. We've developed brand.com and a couple of other solutions in that space. I prefer not to talk about this overhyped word of digitalization of the supply chain and all these buzzwords. Quite frankly, I believe 80% of the people that talk about this don't actually know what it means to themselves. So I try and break it down into a very manageable and understandable components, and that's the path that I'm trying to lead Geodis onto. And my champion in doing that is Evelyn, which I have kindly requested to participate as a panel member in this forum. So with that, I am sorry that I wasn't able to witness all of the presentations. I like your presentation, Alvin. To be honest, I'd like to look into it as well. So you know, we got to exchange some data here. But to me, that's my vision of our industry going into the next 5 to 10 years, in my view. And the ones who don't make it are the ones who are not going to survive if you don't put the control back into the hands of customers. And with that, I yield back to Paul.
Yeah, I got to yield. Well, it sounds like the Capitol Hill, eh? They yield to the protesters, and then after that, took back from the protesters.
Right.
Thank you, folks. Let me go into this more fun part of throwing out the questions and see who take it on, right? We know that our current dear president of USA is going to be stepping down in the next 13 days. And we know that in his stepping down, Joe Biden can't really do much changes, not in a short period of time, but we know that he will try. But just now someone did comment and says that, or they commented on this and says that there will be obvious three regions, the European region, the US region, and the Asia Pacific region. And we have been hearing about the decoupling of the industry because of the last 4 years of Donald Trump. So maybe these questions to all of you and says, what can we expect from this current change of administration in the next 2 weeks on Asia Pacific, or at least on the global supply chain development? Anyone want to take on first? Amongst my panelists, I invite Graham to say something.
That's very kind of you, Paul. I think it obviously is very, very early days. We haven't even said goodbye to the last establishment. But you know, I think I would come back to what I said at the beginning, and that is, if you look at global supply chains, if you look at what's going on in Asia, we've seen massive disruption. Some of that was caused by the administration in the US and the geopolitical environment with China. But I have to say that when a new establishment comes in, or a new administration comes in, I still think we're going to see disruption. I still think we're going to face through 2021 a challenge of how we distribute vaccines around the world in order to get economies turning again. And therefore, I just think the key thing as a supply chain professional is to make sure that we've got the best and most robust processes in place so that organizations can pivot, organizations can adapt to whatever disruptions are thrown at them. I mean, that's how I would position it. And I think my view is very clear that the best way to handle disruptions is through robust processes with robust technology that support those processes. And that for me is digitalization. That's the process that we engage in. And that's what many of the world-class companies that we work with are doing right now and will continue to do.
Thank you, Graham. Wei Chen, can I ask you, especially from this geopolitical point of view, how this, I mean, at least we know that the Singapore government tend to be a little bit more proactive, but how would this prep the rest of at least the region, the countries around the world? Do you see anything changing or it changes?
I think what we can be certain is that it's going to be very uncertain times ahead. And like what Graham had said, I think it's best to be prepared for it with robust processes, or kind of a good ability to adapt to the circumstances that are changing. I'm no political analyst, so I won't comment too much on what will happen. But if you look at the US and China trade war, it will disrupt certain sectors and it will disrupt companies to varying extents, depending on how their supply chains are organized, depending on how exposed they are to certain markets, and of course, how the administrations would then target certain sectors. So I think there will be some disruptions, and then the impact would differ from company to company, sector to sector. What I think would be interesting for us and Southeast Asia is companies looking at not just, we talk a lot about China plus one or maybe India plus one, but I quote my minister, he mentioned it's more about anything but one. So how do you look at supply chain that's not over reliant on one source? And how do you look at access to markets and access to new suppliers that can balance your supply chain both for resilience, but also we must remember that there's still a bottom line to look after. So while we pursue resilience, companies will have to balance that. Efficiency doesn't go out of the window. So I think what will be interesting for our region is that we are starting to hear and engage with companies who are thinking about looking at Southeast Asia, thinking about using Singapore, right? So for instance, if we are talking about having some resilience in the supply chain and Singapore being a node, some companies have thought about using Singapore to manufacture products, even though we are not the most cheap location, because there's some certainty in us being able to, send out the goods that we produce. We don't have export bans. We have kept trade moving, and other companies will look at how to use Southeast Asia as a production base. So I think for us, I'm optimistic that whatever challenges are coming, I think the the region will stand to perhaps benefit to to some of the rethinking around supply chains. I don't think it is a zero-sum game. I think different parts, the pie hopefully could grow for everybody, and it's about how companies diversify a bit of their supply chain and diversify some of the market access that they have been reliant on.
Hey, Paul, can I say something on this?
Yeah, I wanted to come to you because Schneider would definitely be greatly affected by these current changes.
Yeah, so maybe just let me chime in. I think one thing that we have to, or the way I look at it is that um, this is the modern global trade now. It's not like before anymore. And what I mean by modern global trade is that things have changed now. Trade is going to be used as a foreign policy by countries. So it's not so much of how WTO decides. Countries will be start to use trade barriers as a means of foreign policy to pressure another country. So the geopolitics have changed a lot more. So that's why I call it a new modern trade, global trade now. It's not like it's so analysts and people who are analyzing the situation will have to see this very differently and no more very silo looking. That's the first point. Secondly, obviously there's now, I think you mentioned about China trade plus one. You still hear a lot of companies saying they want to move off from China. But now I believe one has to look at it not just as a China-US, but in the perspective of the whole COVID that has taught us about BCP and multi-sourcing, multi-location. So I believe companies, including Schneider, will start to go back and look at network design. Network design is going to be very important now. How do you multi-source 1+1, whether you have strategies like region for region build instead of sourcing for multi places because you want to reduce the BCP, reduce the risk. So those kind of conversation comes in as a part of network design. I think it's going to play a very big part, and it's going to prove to be very useful and opportunity for a lot of companies, whether 3PL or not, because it will start to pop out areas where you're going to start to build, right? And the next thing is very important is, I think this has to be looked in terms of inventory optimization. How can you take how can all these changes now give you an advantage how you want to deliver to the customer? Because if you have multi-sourcing and multi-location, do you now operate differently such a way that you can be closer to your customer, right? So some of the strategies of multi-source to late postponement, I think will take back more importance in this current modern global trade. So if you ask me, the change is just not China and US. Because of COVID and all this disruption, in summary, I think the whole network design will have to be looked. And again, you can't do everything in a single year or even multi-years. I think, again, companies must be smart to look at where your main arteries are. Where the main arteries that you want to buy insurance in terms of revenue, in terms of BCP, and in your main arteries, especially to your customers, try to build that redundancy such a way that you can build insurance to your whole delivery fulfillment. I think that's going to be the key thought process around this.
Let me take that answer that you gave and then go a bit further, right? We understand, or we've been reading that priority is going to be given to vaccine distribution, and the vaccine distribution itself is a very complex logistical. It's almost a very complex logistical activity to take on, and this is where some of the folks WHO says there was an increase in rates, air freight rates 10 times the normal when they asked to distribute certain vaccines. What will be the impact in terms of capacity and capacity being used for normal supply chain distribution, whether it's both air and sea, and what is the impact on the abnormal part? Because in the next 1 to 3 years, or the next 3 years at least, we are looking at that vaccines has to be distributed to quite a big part of the world. So, Jaya, maybe you take this first. Is your capacity currently being affected, and are you being asked to pay higher price for your distribution?
Right now, even without vaccine, we are asked to pay higher price, whether it's air freight or ocean freight. I see Mark nodding his head. So even without vaccine, we are. And my worry is that we use this as an excuse to pump the rates even higher, right? That's number one. Number two, but there's another school of thought who believe that this will impact only selected areas because of those that are moving on reefer, cold supply chain will be the one that is going to be impacted the most, right? And there's another school of thought says that this is like an injection, is like a booster to the whole trade flows. Because of this, it will inject a lot of capacity into the market because you have flows going in because you want to bring air freight into the market, right, for specific lanes. So because it adds more capacity, it's going to be a helpful to, it's like an injection shot for someone that's been very lame because of all these problems, right? Capacity has dropped. So another school of thought is that you can add capacity to the market. So how much is going to unravel? To be honest, I'm not sure. But if you look at the numbers, what McKinsey and World Trade Figures shows, you're talking about 15 billion doses for people. They're talking about double doses, right? So it's going to be massive, and it's a kind of disruption or opportunity, if you want to call it, that we have to unravel. So right now, all that as a shipper we did is to mark the key origin points that we think vaccine manufacturers are, where it's going to come out from, and we see whether our supply chain is overlapped with that. That's what we are trying to see, and see whether we can have early view or early kind of warnings that whether we can run into trouble.
Can we get our logistics guy to say something?
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to say something, Paul. Am I allowed?
Yeah, I know. Yes.
All right. So, well, first of all, I want to get back to the previous debate a little bit, because I probably share Jaya's view most. I personally believe that it provides a tremendous opportunity, and I'll try and explain that, and then I'll get to the vaccine, because it's kind of related. First of all, I think you were quite negative, Paul, on the US situation, but given the fact that the Democrats now control the Senate as well, I think it's become a little bit more easier. Having said that, I think the US has its own problems, and so they'll be focused on resolving those rather than spending their time in other parts of the world. I think that would be fair to say. I think Europe is still struggling with Brexit and its own disjointment, if you like. So, to me, this is really the time for Asia to step up. And you can see China is yielding its power more and more across the globe, as well as across APAC. And so, we've become, quite a strong self-sustaining region with an enormous consumption power. And that should be leveraged, in my view. I would agree with Wei Chun that it provides opportunity for Southeast Asia. As a matter of fact, if I were EDB, I'd step up my efforts by 100-fold, because the China 2+1 or the de-risking of supply chains, Southeast Asia will be the biggest beneficiary of this. And that's not just for European or US multinationals. We see Chinese companies looking to relocate a part of their production efforts across the region. And so, to me, that's a tremendous opportunity, and we should reel in as much as we can across Southeast Asia, including Singapore as the kind of node or hub of this whole network. Going back to the vaccine, I think, what we've seen in terms of what Jaya mentioned, that he had to pay higher rates despite the fact that there wasn't even vaccine distribution going on at that point. That's just a simple question of supply and demand. And the supply, unfortunately, is not very substantial with all of these flights being cancelled, and that just drives up the price, and it's being used as a tool to claw back some of the losses in the past from the shipping lines. So that's just a short-term issue that we have to overcome. I think long-term or short-term air capacity will be taken up by vaccines, which will put pressure on pricing for, let's say, the general customer base, such as Jaya. But that will be a short-term thing. And then longer term, that will kind of fade away with, consistent supplies from different locations. Bearing in mind that the vaccine production locations are mostly within the US itself, within Europe itself, and limited to 3 or 4 points within APAC. Korea, India, Thailand, and so, those are the sourcing locations that will probably have some degree of capacity constraints in the short term on the vaccine distribution. I think the answer for the freight forwarders has really been, such as we've done in Geodis, which really wasn't driven at all by the COVID outbreak, but by the need to own your own capacity and network. And so we've started putting in our own flights pretty much across the globe, and we're looking to expand that and double that in this year. And that should bring some of that capacity back. That should stabilize the market. That should stabilize, the supply, and serve the demand that is there for non-vaccine customers, which at the end of the day is our bread and butter business. And we shouldn't be looking to rip off customers in the short term, in my view, as an industry. So, I think that's my view. But I think it holds tremendous opportunity for the industry. It holds tremendous opportunity for Southeast Asia. And I would expect EDB to, increase their efforts, by tenfold, if you like. I'm sure they are, knowing them. So, Wei Chun, you got anything to say on that? You got any surprises for us?
No, I think we stand ready to support companies who are looking to tap into Southeast Asia, and then we will work to develop solutions together with companies. So looking forward to working with the community.
It's a politically correct answer.
Well, if I may, if I could chime in a little bit. I think we're making too much of it, to be honest. I'm not the ear expert. I'm not going to hold out to be, but let's not forget that India and China will do their own vaccines. So that's 2/5 of the population taken care of and won't be part of that mix too much. Also, when Singapore got its first doses, we're talking about a couple of pallets. There's a couple 100,000 doses on a pallet on these things. We need to be careful about how big it is. But yes, it's an opportunity. Yes, companies are gearing up and are enjoying that and need to gear up more. I think it's more of a domestic issue. I mean, we're doing vaccines there for years, but domestically, you can see in the US, it was just with the Pfizer, handling it with the temperatures and so forth is difficult. They just can't get it out fast enough. So I think that's more of an issue on the domestic front that governments need to deal with, let alone 3PLs who could be long-term or medium-term pushed into doing more in that area.
Thank you. Folks, I think we are dragging this for a while, so maybe I do what I asked you all to think of for my sound bites, right? Just one word, one sentence that you can say for 2021. Starting with the same order. So maybe we reverse the order. We start with the young man and then we end with Jaya. So just one word, one sentence of what you think 2021 is going to bring to you. For me, it's actually a blur for 2020. But 2021, I reserve one more word, so I won't say until all of you have said. So, Alvin, one word, one sentence.
I think e-logistics will be here. I think that's where that's how I believe lah. So e-logistics, so incumbents going online or startups driving logistics to actually go e. So e-logistics is the word for me.
Oh, yours is e-logistics, right? Graham, not SAP, but something. Graham, can't hear you. You're muted.
Hold on. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll say the one word again. The one word has got to be recovery. And I think associated with that one word, there is massive, massive opportunity. And I think the smart companies, the world-class companies that have got world-class processes will really maximize the opportunity. So I'm really optimistic about 2021.
Thank you. That was a good one. Recovery. Xavier?
Yeah, well, I said earlier, I see 21 as a sort of a bridge year for the future market. So it's all to do with this year. We have time for ourselves to realign our business for the future, whichever it's going to be. And that is, to me, the key for this year, to be able to adjust fast.
A bridge sounds like Tenet. Okay, I'm going to go that way. Thank you, Xavier. What about Mark?
Yeah, I think the word for me is cautiously optimistic in 2021. We need to stay close to our customer base and understand what they're doing and what their pressures are, but also one eye on economy and what's happening across the different markets, as well as the geopolitical issues, which in theory could be on a collision course, and we need to be aware of that.
Cautiously optimistic. That's good. Evelyn?
Hi. So for me, it's more on learning from what we have actually experienced in 2020 and continue to accelerate, the use of technology in the industry.
Okay, it's a learning thing, right? Mitch?
As the e-com guy, obviously I have 3 words. It's continuous e-commerce acceleration. So what we have seen in 2020 with up to 30% of e-com, we're not going back to below 10. This is not going to happen. So companies need to get ready, and in order to stay relevant, they need to boost their capabilities on e-com.
That's good. I have now Wei Chen.
Hi, for me, the word is hopeful. I'm realistic of the challenges ahead, like Mark, but also hopeful of the opportunities that are available to those who are ready to change and adapt.
Jaya?
A catchphrase to me will be supply chain nightmare to supply chain revolution.
Even you had nightmare last year, it's over.
All of us have some problems. I just use a more drastic word, nightmare.
Okay, good thing it's not matrix reloaded. My chairman, I give you one last word.
What, you want me to respond to your question, or is it a last word?
Yeah, one word. One word, what you see in 2021.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think it's adaptability because, whether it's COVID or whether it's the US geopolitical situation or whether it's whatever it is, we've got to adapt. And I think if one thing that we have learned in the COVID era is that we have to adapt very quickly, we have to be agile, and we have to use all means of technology to enable that new adaptation. And that kind of sums it up to me for the industry. For Geodis, it's one word: transformation.
Thank you, Ono. Like what I said when I started, 2020 was a blur. So for me, 2021 is let's wake up, folks. Let's get things done. You have to keep moving. If you don't keep moving, the world will stop. You folks basically are supply chain professionals. In your own ways, in your own action, you're helping the supply chain to move. So stay awake, participate. We have until 31st of December 2021 to finish this. Supply Chain Asia is here to stay. We continue to do our work, and we are looking forward to all the support that all of you can give, right? And again, thank you very much for joining me. This is about 90 minutes of run. We appreciate all the efforts. We appreciate all the support. We appreciate all the time taken. And for the friends who are online, I'm going to stay on for a while. And the rest of you, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for being with us. Take good care. Stay safe. Social distance. Remember this. You need your mask everywhere you go. If you're in Singapore, this is very important. If you're in any other country, enjoy yourself. Take care, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.
See you,
Thank
Evelyn.
you, Paul.
Hey, see you, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Take care, Jaya.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye, Paul.
Hey. Who else do online? Oh.